Over the Edge. It's a film. It came out in the late 70s, and it captures an era and also kind of this cultural thing that was going on at the time that I lived through, right? I graduated junior high, 8th grade in 1980. So this was right there. I mean, the hairstyles, part hair in the middle, the combs, the plastic combs with the handle sticking out of your back pocket, the way everybody was dressed, you know, mid-drift shirts. I mean, the guys are wearing stuff like that. It's a wild film, you know. Everybody's getting around on bicycles. The main character, one of them is Matt Dillon. I mean, he's young. He's probably like 13 years old in it, and he's riding a Schwinn cantilever frame, black, with a small tree, you know, BMX. That's how I did mine, exactly the same. And man, it was just, the music is the Cars and Cheap Trick and the Ramones. This is my childhood. The movie is about, you know, youth. Like kids running around with no supervision, and which is what was going on at that time. I mean, we grew up as free-range kids. It's one of those things that, it's the reason why people my age are always commenting on young kids today, because it's very strange how kids are being raised today. I got these guys out here in a truck that are screwing up my video. It's my second attempt to make this video. And as I was saying, I mean, our parents had no idea what we were doing and where we were. And my friends, a lot of them, 12 years old, 13 years old, were smoking grass and doing speed and mescaline and acid. I avoided those pitfalls at that age. I later kind of got into it a little bit, and but for me it was mostly grass and speed and a little coke when I was in high school, that sort of thing, but nothing. I mean, I wasn't doing heavy drugs. I never got into heroin or anything like that, you know. But the main thrust of this film, it's about this community, like a new development community, and there wasn't anything in place for the kids. So they were like a lot of them were just like little hoodlums. And that's exactly how it was when I was growing up in New Jersey. And probably a lot worse in many ways. I just love watching these movies, though, that capture that time period. The movie it's a propaganda piece, and it's a warning, which did scare a lot of people at the time. Like in the movie, like the main character, he's already on probation. He's thumbing his nose at the cops and screwing with them and getting chased by them all the time. And so that part of it's fun. As a matter of fact, I remember I lived for a year in New York. My parents got divorced when I was 14. I got to choose who to go with. I automatically chose my dad, but I didn't know that was going to mean I'd be living alone. And I lived that year in this little town up in New York where I got in a ton of trouble. We used to shoot bottle rockets at the cops. We used to have fake fights on a street corner, and when somebody would pull over, get out of their car to help us, somebody else would jump in the car and steal it. We'd go for a joyride. We were doing horrible things. And before that, I remember I lived at the Jersey Shore when I was first, like, a few years old. My dad had a seasonal business there. I was there every summer, and then I moved back and went to high school there. But we lived in Clifton, we lived in Kearney, we lived in Patterson. We did live for about a year up in Waynorth, Jersey, up in Vernon. That's where I was shooting arrows in the air in this field, and then running up and seeing how close I'd get to the arrow when it hit the ground. That was always fun. I remember Kearney, 6 years old, 7 years old. This is not a joke. I started a fight club, really, in the basement of the tenement building we lived in. I think there were like 6 apartments in this building. And with all the neighbor kids, we didn't know what we were doing. So we were developing fight styles based on animals, right? Like Kung Fu. Beating each other up. I remember one day walking home from school, there was these two kids, Mickey and Ricky, and Ricky's on his knees, Mickey's behind him, and Mickey's just pummeling Ricky in the head. And I walk over to him and I say, hey, stop that. And he goes, no. I said, stop that. He says, no. So I, bam! He punched him right in the face, and his nose just exploded, blood everywhere. And of course, I was the bad kid then. Nobody could play with me for a couple weeks or so. And then I used to break into places. I used to go through the woods and find these yards that backed up to what we call the woods. Now it's all developed, I'm sure. And like get into windows, Jimmy windows. I'm no joke, 7 years old, 8 years old doing this. I wasn't stealing anything. It was just the adventure of breaking and entering. And I had done all kinds of crazy stuff like that. And then by the time I got to Patterson, I was already like my own human being and used to being out. My mom had no idea where I was all day, and she didn't care either. As long as I was home when the street lights came on for dinner, that was it. Like even in the mornings, when I was 5, I was waking up on my own, getting dressed, making my own breakfast, and walking to school, getting my sister up, feeding her. All I had to do was shake my mom in bed and breathe on her face so she could smell that I brushed my teeth. That was the big thing every morning. So, yeah, Patterson was rough because it was the, you know, every time I ever really got in trouble was when I was hanging out with dumb people doing dumb things, right? I remember a kid pulled a knife on me once. Funny story about that is there's a kid, I didn't know he was there. A good friend of mine, Mike, became a cop in Patterson. I think he became a detective there too. And he told me, we were talking about that not long ago. He's like, dude, I was there, I watched it. This kid pulled a knife on me and started slashing at me. And I actually was able to, like, take it from him, get it away from him. And then I thought back on it, and I realized, well, he had grandparents that lived up the street from me. And these were not, like, really nice people. They were grumpy old people. Get off my lawn kind of people. And like the kind of people, I think they give you like an apple at Halloween. Like nobody liked these people. And then when these kids, the grandkids would come in, they were just douchebags. Just nobody liked them. And so I remember in the summer one time, we had this ice cream man who, he didn't just sell ice cream. He sold us fireworks and cherry bombs and smoke bombs. And if you were an older kid, he'd sell you grass and other drugs. Like the ice cream man was the guy that sold things, little knives, all kinds of stuff you could get from him if he trusted you. That's the ice cream man in Patterson, New Jersey in the 1970s. That was the childhood. He was the dealer for the kids in the neighborhood. It's crazy. So I got these 2 smoke bombs, and it's hot out, right? So you got your front door open with the screen door up, and all the windows in the house are open. You got a fan pulling air into the house. So I lit these smoke bombs and put them on the sill, 3 of them. I had 3 of them, and I lit them and placed them there, and ran and went across the street and just sat there like this and watched as the whole house filled with, all the smoke started coming out the front door and the other windows. The whole family comes running out. So I probably deserved it that time the kid pulled a knife on me. But then I started hanging out with this other kid, and I mean, we did horrible things. We were vandals, like straight up, just for the thrill of it, which is stupid and silly. Again, these memories all be inspired because I watched this film Over the Edge yesterday. And I remember we went out one night to a used car lot and flattened every tire on every car in the car lot. This kid, as a matter of fact, was nothing but trouble. One day, for like a week, he's coming to school every day. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and he's flashing me cash. Like his pockets were full of cash. Where'd you get it? Doesn't tell me. Doesn't show up Friday, and he's gone for weeks. Comes back, and he tells me there was this ice cream shop that he was breaking into every morning, going to the cash register, and taking all the money out. But the moron that he is does it every day in a row. So on Friday morning he's doing it. He looks up, there's 2 cops standing there just waiting for him. So this is like towards the end of the school year. It's like June. It's hot. It's warming up. And he says, let's go for a walk. We go for a walk. There's these woods behind this building, and it's attached to this kind of like structure of a building that there's trees growing through it, and there's an old truck there with no chassis. You may have heard this story before. I've told it before. and he reaches in, grabs a gasoline can, and he starts throwing gas on the side of the building. As soon as I saw that, I ran away. He didn't tell me he was going to do that. I had no idea. I run away. He comes running out of the woods. We go up the street, over a block, look down the hill. The flames are 3 times the height of the building. The whole thing burnt to the ground. And we go home, and I'm lying about it. And a few days later, the cops show up at my house, and I'm lying. And then, like a week later, I come home. My mom's upset, and she says, somebody said you burnt the store down. So I went and told the truth, and that turned into a whole fiasco. It could have changed my life for the worst, but it worked out in my favor because I did tell the truth. But it just went on from there. When I moved up to New York, I was hanging out with those guys, and that was really bad, dumb stuff, man. Really bad, dumb stuff. I mean, directed at the cops many times. Again, stealing cars, all this stuff, fighting, smoking grass, cutting school, all the dumb stuff you're not supposed to do. And then I had to go to summer school to pass, and my dad gave me an option. He's like, hey, you don't have to go to school if you don't want to, but you got to work every day. He said, if you want to go to school, you got to go to school every day and pass. And I said, well, if I'm going to do that, can I live down the shore, which was my happy place as a kid. So every summer I worked and paid my own way. I lived in a boarding house, and then in the winter during the school year, he knew so many people, he'd find me this super cheap, like, beach shack, and that was it. And like 10th grade, he was around like 3 times a month. By the time I was a senior, I saw him maybe once a month. It wasn't because he didn't love me. He was too busy. He was on the road doing a circuit of diners and working extra to give my mom money and pay for my sisters and give her child support and give my sisters money and toss me some money to live when I needed it. And that guy was a superhero. But that first year there, I got in with the wrong crowd right away. These guys were peeping Toms, like around town, doing all that stuff and breaking into houses and partying and just doing bad, stupid shit. Thank God I met a couple, like, nice, smarter kids who were on the first aid squad. And so I got into the first aid squad. I started doing that, and that was like a good change for me. Because before I met those kids, like a straight up better quality people, I hadn't known what that was like. Like, you go to somebody's house whose parents are still married, who care about their kids, who eat dinner together and ask them questions, and it's just love there and a nice thing. Like, that was like Brady Bunch shit to me. Like, I didn't think that was real until I actually experienced it. And I will say that we still all smoked grass and did everything else, but we weren't doing any real criminal activity at that point. And we had a town. It was a tourist town. There was actually, now in the wintertime, there wasn't a lot to do, and that's when some bad stuff could happen. But once it got warmer, there was plenty to do, plenty of jobs to be had. Everybody worked on the boardwalk, or worked the beach patrol, or were lifeguards and all of that. So, and we liked having money. And back then, now we're talking early 80s, when you were old enough to get a car, you could buy a muscle car for $600. So, but yeah, it was, I grew up in that era, in the late 70s, in the early 80s, when I was real young, where we were doing all that stuff and living just like those kids in that flick. As a matter of fact, even the characters in that movie, it's so well done, because if you watch that, you'll probably see those characters that will remind you of yourself and your friends. You can identify with them. There's this one kid with these loud shirts, and he had this attitude. He's totally my friend Todd from high school. 100%. Same exact dude. The kid that gets shot in the movie, that's that asshole that burnt the store down in my life, you know, who ended up going in and out of jail his whole life. Total loser. So it is an interesting thing. I don't know. I don't want to, like, overly, like, because we were wrong, man. It was a bad thing to do, but we didn't have any kind of guidance. And then we went to the full opposite extreme of things, where the kids today, I feel like they're kind of infantized to a certain extent, right? Where they're not as mature as we were at an early age, right? Because, like, we grew up on the street, man. We had lives. We had things going on. I mean, bullying, look, if somebody was bullying you, you learned how to deal with it, right? You either got tough enough to defend yourself, and or you developed a sense of humor. You got other friends that could back you up. Like, you had to figure it out, man. There was nobody there like, oh, yes, and no, because that's life. That's real life. And I mean, by the time I had graduated high school, you felt more like a man. There was no question. But there was for me still. I mean, that's why I went to the Marines. I wanted to be, the service is man school, especially the Marine Corps. That's friggin' man school. So I don't regret any of it. It's just weird for me to see young people today that don't have any of those skills, that are really, really soft. And they're going to be soft for a longer period. I've met people in their 30s that are still soft and don't have the quick-wittedness and street smarts and common sense that I knew that I had when I was 13. It's just, I'm not saying one is better than the other. It's just an observation I'm pointing out to you. And I'm recommending this flick. You got to see it. Over the Edge, Matt Dillon, like 78 in that range, 77, 78. It was a wild time in the USA, man. Anyhow, that's all. Just my young vandal story. I don't know what I'm going to call this one, but I thought you'd get a kick out of it. I've told some of these stories before. If you ever want me to talk about this, like any of these stories, or ask if I did something, I'm honest about it. I got nothing. Well, I can't tell you everything. I can't tell you everything, but it's been a wild ride. No real regrets. Life's too short for that shit. You learn from it and you just try to make yourself a better person. I'm a better person today. But I think I'm a better person today for having been the stupid punk kid that I was then. And if you were a stupid punk kid then, it's even easier for you to recognize it now and call it out when you see it. Have a good day. Thanks for being here. Just felt like talking about it. I'll catch you in the next one. Be good to one another. Don't be a hoodlum.